Hello and welcome to Newswire. I am Munib Hamid now. With the inevitable fall of Panjshir this week, the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan is now complete. Among the many countries that are now faced by a daunting strategic challenge is India, which is left with few friends in Afghanistan now. The withdrawal of all US troops from Afghanistan is likely to accelerate current trends in India's relations with the United States, China and Russia. Greater cooperation with Washington, deeper conflicts with Beijing, and wider fissures in the traditional strategic partnership with Moscow. Now, reinforcing these structural shifts and their mirror image are Pakistan's changing relations with the United States, China and Russia. Now, for long, India's foreign policy elite grumbled about the dangers of the United States leaving Afghanistan at the mercy of the Taliban. And today, this is what we are going to discuss. And we have with us Lieutenant General retired Ghulam Mustafa. Sir, welcome to the program. And also joining us today at Newswire is Dr. Hasnain, Javed, foreign affairs expert. Now, first question, I'm going to throw it at Mr. Mustafa, and that is the CIA chief's visit to India, and Burns, accompanied by a few officials, paid a very quiet visit to India on Wednesday, and primarily to discuss ways to mitigate security threats that may emanate from Afghanistan, sir.
Yes, he also visited our chief last evening. The issue is the Americans, frankly, at this point in time, are just in the wilderness, in the strategic wilderness, so to speak. They are getting up for what they think, at least what I think they are getting up for, is how now to destabilize this region. Because stability in Afghanistan and Pakistan is something which is anathema to the West, that the possibilities of such a thing happening and its consequences aren't too good for the American-led Western world. So that is one possibility. The second, of course, is that he's trying to find the emerging scenario in Afghanistan. The new regime in Kabul is about to take over. It has been announced already, and as reports are, they are going to be sworn in on the 11th September. And that is one sore point, I think, that the CIA chief would be discussing with Pakistan. Is it possible to persuade Afghans to change the dates? And of course, between Pakistan and India, they are now trying to, I think, give lollipop to Pakistan again, to somehow cozy up or balance out our relationship with India and give some space to India in the emerging scenario in Afghanistan. That is something that Pakistan has been always been very, very allergic to, for very good reasons, because right after Pakistan came into being, Indian influence in Afghanistan impacted Pakistan negatively, not once, not twice, but many times. That is something that Pakistan can ill afford, and that is something that India and America both want in this region. It is of interest to note that the British intelligence chief as well as the Russian intelligence chief were also recently in India. So something is cooking up, and well, I can understand the Americans and the Brits to be on some same page as regards India and the emerging scenario with regard to China and with regard to what should be done to Pakistan and with Pakistan and of course Afghanistan and to Afghanistan. So there are a number of issues that are very current, very hot, and if you look beyond them, one is very clear that at least I'm in my own way of thinking, on my logic, that come what may, Afghanistan and Pakistan, this geographical region is of high interest rate to the West, and not for what we can offer to them by way of peace, by way of progress, by way of development of the entire region, but what is possible if this region stays unstable and doesn't go anywhere.
Of course, as you mentioned, obviously there are powers who want to see peace in the region, and of course there are powers who do not want to see peace in the region. Dr. Hasnain, Javed, now let's have you in this discussion now. Basically, you must have heard Mr. Mustafa's statement and his analysis as well, and obviously, so what do you make up of the visit of CIA's chief to India? And he obviously met Ajit Doval, the National Security Advisor, and he is famous for his policies of anti-Pakistan and obviously anti-peace in Afghanistan. So what do you make up of this visit, and what is basically CIA asking of India?
See, I can see in a different lens. One of the two motives given by the RAW, and I clearly saying it RAW, because the GSP Plus, we has been sanctioned and banned by the recent motive, as we our export is about the 24 billion, and now we have been sanctioned and stopped by the GSP Plus. So we are out of the GSP Plus status. Second is FATF. There is we have covered with the 23 sanctions what they wanted to clear out, and we have cleared out 23 out of 25. But still they have given us 6 more. So this one is the indirect pressure or us given by this man, obviously those who want to make the Afghanistan a land of no man. So which is, completely against the CPAC, completely against the Gavadar, completely against the conspirational, complete destruction and forced fiction by the Indians. So this is what the poles and pole apart. Now, the US and the West and the possible access of the strategic counter alliance, there are the two parts. So what would be the results? So now the result is that there is a troika of the Russia, China, and Pakistan. Now, so nobody knows that the same Taliban is from 1996 to 2001 is accepted the China, whereas it is completely impossible, and most of the people are quite flummoxed or flabbergasted about this point, that how they accept China where the religious ideology, theocracy or theocratic organization or theocratic structure or theocratic governance system is not allowed them to be the part of the China. But this is completely a new strategic design, a dynamic shift, a psychological shift, or you can call it another way out. So, but the point here in that the India trying to create a more destructive movement in another 6 months. And as journalists have said, it is a very high time for Pakistan but I am very much sure about that, as the reliable resources from Pakistan says, don't worry about it. So you don't have to worry. People, the world must not have to worry, but we must have to focus this situation and scenario that the relationship of USA with Russia, USA with China and Pakistan. So with Russia is to criticize Russia political style and accuse them for the spying political interferences. So they counter this one. Now on the Chinese front, the 65% of import and export has been seized from US and China. So this is a quite, it was a Cold War, now it is an open war. The Putin, putting up the statements against the president of, and Joe Biden is clearly giving the stance against the Russia and the China, and they obviously this war and the pandemic, they have clearly victimized China for this reason. So the trade war between US and China has led decline trade. So complete decline trade, and they moved for the economic reason. They have entered Korea. They have entered all those mainland areas from China to Taiwan, Korea, and other things. So they are creating the conspiracies against the China. And the biggest area, the root area, or you can say, you can put up this question to the General Saab after that. You can say that the Pakistan is the most important pivot and most important region to change the geopolitical situation and geoeconomic situation. The word is completely shifted from the politics to geoeconomics. Now, the current Taliban is filling the vacuum. The governance structure is the most urgent challenge for the Taliban rulers now. If I take it for the number one, number two, or maybe the 4 points, I would say, from inclusive and the broad-based government giving representation to the all segment is very much important. Second, the new Taliban government should have to ensure the word of respect for the human rights and the rights of women and the minorities. And third could be not allow the territory to be used by the non-state actor, including ISS-K, Al-Qaeda, EITK, and TPP. Now, the important part is who is giving a fund to TTP, ISS, Daesh. Now, and there are so many other pockets and warlords are still there, and there are other minority groups are there in Afghanistan. So deep down, deep there, China was the one who dared to, initially 6 months or maybe a year before, they have developed so many organizations over there, so many companies have been working over there, nobody knows. But now it was an open secret to the world that now China is the only country after the Russia. Russia was, to the statement, yes, you can say that. But the forefront country could be, that is China, the leading South Asian power, you can say.
Mr. Mustafa, according to Dr. Hasnain, China is the forefront country in the region, and obviously after the withdrawal of US forces, there is a vacuum, and obviously China will try to fill that in now. But coming back to the point of the CIA chief's visit to India, let me ask you, Mr. Mustafa, what is America or CIA asking of the Hindutva RSS-led regime to help them or to participate, or what are they asking of India?
If you look at the overall picture, what you find is that India is somewhere in the limbo. On one hand, you find Pakistan, Afghanistan, leading up to Central Asian republics, and Russia, not yet on one page, not on the same page as yet, but thinking of going there. And they have to, because unless they go there, everybody stands to lose in the game. That is one side of the story. And if you look, link it northwise to China, then this whole region, including China, is something that is not only surrounding India from all sides, but it's also creating problems for the emerging geostrategic, geopolitical, and geoeconomic situations. What the Americans now have been trying to ask India to do was, as a bulwark against, number one, China, and number two, they brought in India and Afghanistan, gave it a lot of space, and they expected India to be able to find its own moorings there. It still has its footprints there, but its overall strength there is now pretty reduced. Its power of mischief is not totally gone. So in this backdrop, as a so-called regional power, so to speak, India is now hanging nowhere. It's somewhere in the middle and has nowhere. It's mooring as part of Quad. Then subsequently, as Joe Biden said in his speech, I think he almost said as much, that American century is over and they're on the river side of the hill now. They're going down. So where does India fit in there? India still fits in with the kind of mischief that the power on downslide as the power in the region, which is actually floundering, that is India. The two of them combined, how can they destabilize this region? I don't think so, and I don't want to have a comment on the subject, but I personally feel that Pakistan is also being pressurized, like Dr. Saab was saying, through different instruments that they have at their hands, like FATF and GSP Plus and other instruments, is also being pressurized to allow India this space, the kind of space that will enable India to expand itself further given the time. Because India, behind the scenes, have also been in negotiation, talking with the Taliban. So in this kind of a scene, I think India is being again encouraged, propped up, and being asked to go the direction where India has already committed. Because India, unfortunately or fortunately, if you look at India, after 71, it was with the so-called non-aligned bloc. As part of that, it supported Soviet invasion in Afghanistan. When Soviet Union was beaten back and thrown out of this region, India was floundering, and they found American as the next power in the region. They went in with the Americans, and the Americans also then pushed out. So having lost on these accounts, India's trust deficit that India has managed to develop within the region and beyond is where India finds its solace when it goes to American side. So we find that it's an interesting scenario.
It is an interesting. Yes, you may complete, please.
Right. And as the whole thing unfolds, it's not going to happen immediately in a month or 2 or 3 or 4. It's going to happen over a period of time. They also want that the emerging Afghan Taliban government should have American favors in there, Indian favors in there if possible. And the rest of the powers in the region also are trying the same, obviously, because they all want a piece of the pie in that. But the Taliban are not ready to listen, they should not. And nobody should be able to even trying to force them into the so-called inclusive government, so to speak. This is a new mantra that Taliban are being forced to accept. Why should they? And what for? Inclusiveness for Taliban is different, and inclusiveness for Pakistan and India and the rest of the world is different. Let Taliban do what they think is good for Afghanistan. That's where I think the whole thing.
Right now, there's another major break in the wall, and which India is not comfortable with, and that is when they had earlier meetings with the Taliban. This question is obviously directed to both of you, and I'll have Mr. Hasnain's view on this first now. In the early statements and dialogue with the Indian officials, the Taliban had assured India of a policy of non-interference in Kashmir. But shortly after their position ascended, the Taliban watered that down and lent some credence to New Delhi's biggest fear, that Afghanistan, run by the Islamic group, could end up as a safe haven. And he also, Suhail Shaheen, the spokesperson, in a recent interview with the BBC, he said that his group intends to raise its voice for Muslims in Kashmir. Now, Hasnain, obviously India has not been a friend of the Taliban, and it has been fighting against the Taliban alongside with the United States. Now the Taliban have, of course, they have issued an amnesty for every person, and with the earlier statement, Taliban said they want good relations with all the countries. But now, keeping this is something to worry for India.
See, this is a completely a different situation. You have seen that the new government been announced, which is interim government, and they're yet not been completed. So in that case, what we are considering to be the part of this government is not presently there. For example, if the Abdul Ghani brother was of the different position we are respecting, Hassan Akhundzada was of the different position, and Sirajuddin Haqqani, Mullah Yaqub, Amir Khan Muqtai, which is acting foreign minister. Now, the sudden change of the whole plan and the whole the governmental structure is the depiction of the design that now they are not taking any lines from any other, which has been taken by the Ghani regime. So the Ghani regime is completely over, and they need a complete peace. So who needs a complete peace? The Southeast Asian region. Russia knows that there is no need of any war, and we are come out of the war zone, and they are now focusing on the geopolitical, geo-economic situation. So we have to be in peace. So in that way, in that case, still the India and the Hindutva, or you can say the RSS mindset, is completely in linked with the war ideas of the Americans. So I don't want to use the word directly or the name country, but the superpower is completely on their toes now, or on their bending down in a different way now. So this war idea is completely flopped, and the Garewal idea of destruction of the Pakistan, destruction of the China, destruction of the Russia is completely failed. I mean, obviously we were the part, and we were being stated that we are the one who supported them for the destruction of the USSR. But now the paradigm shift is completely towards the different angle, the political side or psychological side, and the solution is toward the financial situation. Now the financial situation is completely different in the whole world. Now we must have to focus, and the world has to focus in a different way. But as I told you that GSP plus restriction, then is an IMF restriction. IMF stopped all the grants to Afghanistan. That is completely, obviously, it is clear. It has to. It should be, because obviously they are fighting with directly with their ideas. Now this Taliban interim government is completely structured or resemblant to the Iranian structure, as I told earlier. Like for example, the theocratic structure. Obviously, they will not go for any democratic structure or any idea of autocratic structure, but that could be the theocratic structure, because when they evacuated the American technocrats or the American-based technocrats or Anglo-Americans people who hijacked whole system has been now evacuated. Now there is no technocracy, there is no structure, there is no governance. Now it has to fully focus that how they form the government at earliest, because we are very much concerned, and next 6 months is very much in focus, because the economic situation is worst in Afghanistan. Obviously, $300 been given to Afghanistan. If I look at to the current aid, which is 31 million in emergency aid to Afghanistan. This is a very recent report I'm sharing with you, and this is an authentic source given by some financial banks, or maybe I'm talking with the Afghanistan. So second would be the 3 million vaccine dose to country. Afghanistan desperately needs money, and Taliban are unlikely to get swift access to roughly 10 billion is asset mostly held abroad the Afghan central bank. So now Afghan central bank is working in a different way. So UN said basically they have given the statement that the basic service in Afghanistan collapsing, the food and other life savings or they're run out of it. So this is the UN statement. $606 billion was needed to provide the critical food and livelihood assistance to the nearly 11 million people in essential health service to 3.4 million. Now, who is responsible for all these? I mean, this all supply chains, food chains, sanctions are there, but the conflict is there. But the Indian factor is completely destructive in this Southeast Asia. General Sir was clearly, highlight the points why they are doing this. We are having the $87 billion of the project, which is called CPAC, and we are in the second phase of the CPAC, where we are establishing the economic zones. We are establishing the different things. But there we have seen the links that in the recent time we have seen that there the 9 killings been done by the obviously linked by the raw people. Obviously, the India has been involved.
And obviously, rightly said, Mr. Hasnain, RAW is definitely involved. And obviously, there are peace spoilers in Afghanistan. And the current government, Taliban, need to be very, very careful with who they are dealing with. And obviously, it is in a hybrid war they have to fight now. We'll continue our discussion after the short break. Welcome back. You're watching Newswire. I am Munib Hamid, and we have with us Lieutenant General retired Ghulam Mustafa along with Dr. Hasnain Javed, Foreign Affairs expert. Now, Mr. Mustafa, I'm going to direct this question to you, which we were earlier talking to Hasnain about. Now, the Kashmir bone, which India isn't likely to digest with the future relations with the Taliban. How do you see that panning out?
Kashmir has a new life now. Why I say that is because having seen Taliban struggle for 20 years against superpower plus, let's say, 48 other countries, and having prevailed and we've gotten to where the Taliban have gotten, gives a new lease of life to the freedom struggle already on in Kashmir, and may I say the rest of India as well. This is a sore point with India. This is also a very sore point with USA. They don't want anything to happen to Kashmir other than allowing India the time and space to absorb it as such and then proceed from there on. You know, if you go back into history, you find two things very interesting. Normally it's not mentioned in our shows or events. Qataris ruled Kashmir for about 150 years. They had this route to come to Kashmir. They didn't come via the areas now known as Pakistan. And then Duranis also ruled Kashmir for some time. They also came from somewhere and not from the areas called Pakistan now. So that is something that we may not really recall, but the Indians remember that. So this is that sore point the Indians have. And before that, they have also been drawing the dissidents from China, Western China, training them in Afghanistan, and using Wakhan corridor, which is just north of Kashmir, to pump them back into Western China to create the trouble that was going on. And we now see that ever since Taliban's ascendancy in Afghanistan and their closing up of this Wakhan corridor, you don't find any of that kind of a thing happening. So that is again something, if you put all this together, you find that Indians are rightly worried. Not only that the Kashmir freedom struggle has gotten a boost morally, but also the fact that there has been a physical link between Kashmir and the areas now known as Afghanistan. And that history predates what was India and what is Pakistan. So that is, I think, is something that worries Indian thinkers. And they should worry, because in the coming days, as I see it, it's now the Kashmiris which have Indians in the lockdown. If India wants itself to survive, it's better for them to allow the right of self-determination to the Kashmiris, instead of trying to rigmarole and trying to get out of it, instead of trying to change the population ratios. That is something that India must understand. And I was reading a tweet by Farooq Abdullah, son of Umar Abdullah. He said that he's happy that Taliban have achieved what they have. Now, coming from someone who's very close in the Indian camps is something which I think we should take note of. And that's the kind of change which has already taken place in Kashmir. So Indian worries, yes. Possibilities of Kashmir getting out of Indian hands, yes. And what follows thereafter. And I think it's time for the world to understand that this monolith called India is a destabilizing factor, not only in the region, but it could blow up the whole world because of the way they are progressing. The thought process which has taken hold of India, the extremism which has taken hold of India, the fact that 7 of its companies were blacklisted for having links to Daesh, the fact that in the last 3 months, 3 major uranium, the nuclear material, that fissile material, was being smuggled out of India. Where? What for? India is also likely to emerge as the linchpin in the nuclear terrorism, which the world should be scared of. I think putting all this together, there was discussion somewhere, and I read that in one of the papers, I don't recall. There's time for the world to think of cutting India down to the manageable sizes, where it is no more a problem for itself as own people, but more importantly for this region and also the world. That is the implication of Taliban's gaining control in Afghanistan, making a government and making it run reasonably well in the next 6 months to 1 year's time. That is when the worry actually will become a reality for India.
Right, Mr. Mustafa, also apprise us with your expert analysis. How do you see the future relationship between the RSS-led Hindutva expansionist agenda versus the Taliban?
Taliban may actually be able to talk to them. There is no issue about that. And Pakistan shouldn't worry about it. But Taliban are never going to actually condone what the Indians are doing within India, to the Muslims, to the Kashmiris, and to the other minorities which are under very serious stress because of their policies. So therefore, expecting Taliban to be a goody-goody like it was with the Ghani government, that is not going to happen. Taliban will have some kind of relationship with India, and that's fine. Much that India wants to use Pakistan as the gateway or just a passage to Afghanistan and beyond into Central Asian republics and Russia and China, that is something that will come at a cost. And that cost, and don't underrate Taliban, at that cost could be again the point I was referring to earlier, Kashmir.
Right now, Hasnain, what do you think, what do you make up of this? The RSS-led Hindutva with an expansionist agenda, and obviously in their map, Afghanistan's also included. And we know the current Prime Minister of India is not really a fan of Muslims. And it is famous of, if we study his history, he has been murdering Muslims in mass quantity now. Now, Modi wouldn't be a fan of the Taliban clearly, and the Taliban have said that they are going to raise their voice for Kashmir as well. How do you make up of all of the situation panning out?
See, it's an interesting situation. I would call it Indian Zionism, right? So it is completely expansionist idea, or they are going to expand. I mean, this idea has been taken by the history, as Journal Sahab rightly said, giving the reference of the history. So it is the same history by obviously some of the Jews idea, or the religious idea, what we call it. But in the modern world, in the 21st century, it repeats again. Now, this current Taliban government have not been taken any direction or any idea, or they are not under the UN idea, or they are, getting any idea from the word, or they are being on the table with the word. They are just into power now. So now this is the, open secret and open, development, and which has been very shocked for the world. So on the other side, India played very bad in way that the Modi's idea, the Modi's RSS, he was clearly a chaiwala of that RSS, and he destroyed the whole idea. And now they put a secular nation into the clearly religious-based structure of the government. Now, you have seen the recent Modi's idea, Modi's ideology, Modi's extremism, Modi's fascist idea, or the fascist India is on move now. It is completely on the peak of the idea. I think he has taken the second sannyas for that. He might have taken the big bear and the different appearance. Now it's complete. He wanted to have the complete Hindu state. If there would be the Hindu state, and America or the superpower or the UN can't resist to the Hindu state, how can we resist to the Taliban state? And Taliban, for example, and there is the Ladakh matter. General Sahab have given the idea of the Ladakh matter, well, there is, on what grounds and what basis they have put in up the 370, Article 370 and /35, and on what basis they are, trying to put the Kashmiris into the Muslim into minority. And creating the majority by the Hindus, and they are wanted to have their own assembly, own people, and cutting short are the Muslim minority. So it was a complete conspirational agenda for the Kashmir, and they have created, and they are trying to make the Kashmiris into minority and get into the majority. So this formula is completely flopped. And now if Taliban putting up, well, because Taliban is completely dependent. They says that we are partnering with the China, and we have a complete back, and we have complete association, complete consolidation with the China. But they haven't given us any statement for the Pakistan in that direct case. Yes, our most reliable resources are there. They are, witnessing the idea. They are focusing, and they are watching the situation for the Daesh, for the ISS. Obviously, RSS is more fascist than every other agencies. Obviously, the Hindu ideology is the expansionist. If they are going for the expansionist idea, what do you think that what Taliban will do? Taliban comprises the 35 ministries, or maybe 25 ministries, but under the council of the 12 people. So what is the Islamic Shura, or what they call it, Amruhum Shura Bainahum? So if they're going for the Amruhum Shura Bainahum, they have developed the Shura, which is the Supreme Council, or what they call it, the Grand Jirga, or what they call it, the other idea. So that would be the different, idea could have, destruct the whole India, or maybe they try to understand this. If they have their Sharia law, if they have their own rules, they are not following any word. They says that we will be in peace. But what if they put up and call up the jihad for Hindustan? Then what they will do if Afghanistan, if the superpower is evacuated, how would India resist to Taliban? Because if the Taliban people, if the Taliban forces, without any technical education, without any aeronautical engineering, they can manage the planes, they can manage the aircrafts, they are managing the high ballistic missiles. So what do you call it? If they make to run away the superpower, what do you think the Hindu government, which is completely Hindavta, or now I cannot call the secular India? Now, the important thing is why India is blaming our IISc. Why India is blaming our military? Why India is? How dare they do to? Try to dump us in that way that we are providing the ideas. Why you are intervening in the Afghanistan in the whole time? Why you are intervening in the whole 20 years? Why you are providing the whole funds? Why? And let me tell you one thing very important, that the FATF is the Paris-based organization, and India is the most important member of FATF. The whole sanction has been given by the Indians and the Indian instruction, and they are asking for the people who are mujahideens or all that. But Pakistan has no interaction. Pakistan has no idea for the independent mujahideens in Afghanistan. So if they are independent mujahideen in Afghanistan, why you are asking for the targeted list, and why you are requiring a targeted list that give us those people listed by the names, that provide us those people, and then we will give you the clean sheet from the FATF. If the whole FATF or GSP or the IMF still, for you people, the 500 million of the grant, dollar grant, the supplementary grant, yet not been dispersed. 6 billion of dollar.
Hasnain, lastly, we are short on time here. Hasnain, lastly, very precisely, if you could mention, what do you see the course of action of India in the near future?
I would say that they will not go back. I think they will not go back. They will create the hurdles. There is a Belt and Road project, and if India wanted to stabilize their nation, their people, they must have to be the part of the Southeast Asian economic bloc. and they must have to be the part of peace. But to me, just because of Modi and RSS idea, people of India must have to think that they must have to change their government, because their government is trying to put it in the very worst scenario, which has not been able to be the part of the geo-economic situation. So what I see is it would be the, we have to watch for another 6 months. India will create trouble for Pakistan, and we have to be with the forces. And I just wanted to, with reference to your platform, I would request the private media that we must not to get into the Indian conspiracy. The Pakistan military, Pakistan forces, Pakistan government is completely aligned, and we need peace, and we are with whosoever take up the peace in Afghanistan, we will with the Afghanistan for the peace. And rest assured that we are ready, and Afghanistan, Russia, Pakistan, and China, if they are together making the geopolitical, geo-economic bloc or economic bloc, then if India would not be the part, rest assured they will nobody.
They are nobody, right? Lastly, your comments, Mr. Mustafa. How do you see the future course of action by India, keeping all of these situations and scenarios in mind?
As of now, I think the Indians and the Americans and they realize are absorbing what has happened and what is likely to happen, because as yet they really don't know how Taliban are going to unfold their way of doing business with Afghanistan, within Afghanistan, and outside the outside world. I mean, their word, whatever they are saying, is not yet being taken very seriously. And you can see a very serious propaganda being developed, this narrative about the inclusiveness kind of a government. There are no women there, and the women are being trashed, and the women are being forced back into their houses. This kind of a propaganda, of course, backed up by India, this is something that is already on ground, and it's being made to work. Indians may seem to have left Afghanistan, but their footprint is there. The people they cultivated over the years, the Afghans, those who are not aligned with Taliban, they are the people who are still there. Indian intelligence is not totally out from there, as is the rest of the intelligence world, like Mossad, like CIA, like MI6, they're all there. And they're, as of now, absorbing what is happening to them. They're going to push back. Like you saw this kind of a demonstration about 2 days back in Kabul against Pakistan, based on something that was totally fabricated. But there was a demonstration nevertheless. It came from somewhere, was sponsored by somebody. It couldn't have happened otherwise. So that is the kind of the pushback that will come, and Taliban have to absorb that. If they try and stop it or suppress it by force, they're going to be damned. If they don't, the pushback is going to take a step further next time. So there's a catch-22 situation for the Taliban, but that is what is being done within Afghanistan to again regain that space, not all of it, at least some of it, from where they can create mischief for Afghanistan, for Pakistan, and in the region in general, with the Belt and Road Initiative as the target, and thereafter, of course, Pakistan as the next target, Pakistan's nuclear weapon system as the target themselves. So there is a plan in place. It's going to go right and left and back and forth some. It may not follow the timelines that they may have worked out, but there's a plan in place, and that is the plan is now going to be worked in a different way, not overt operations, 20 years, so much of money, so much of destruction, didn't get them anywhere. I think the covert is the next way of going things.
Rightly said. Now, thank you very much, Lieutenant General retired Ghulam Mustafa, with us on the show now, and also Dr. Hasnain Javed, Foreign Affairs expert. Thank you very much for being on Newswire. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it was widely assumed that India's strategy of multi-alignment, sustaining simultaneous strategic partnerships with the United States, Russia and China would survive major regional and global changes. But the growing security challenges from China have rendered that assumption moot and nudged India closer than ever before to the United States. Now, the latest developments in Afghanistan could intensify Sino-Indian contradictions, consolidate Indian-US relations and produce greater distance between India, Russia and the quickening the pace of the transformation of India's great power relationships that was already underway. This was Newswire. Thank you very much for watching.